So a lot of news yesterday. Some of it good.
Some of it good.
Some of it good.
Some of it good.
Let's start there.
Anytime an American returns home, an American who is wrongfully in prison returns home, that is good news. And that's where we're going to start this morning before we get to the less good news. That American who was wrongfully detained in Russia, now back on U.S. soil, a man named Marc Fogel. He was released yesterday in a deal brokered by President Trump's special envoy. The 63-year-old teacher from Pennsylvania was held captive for more than 3 years. He was arrested in Moscow back in 2021 for traveling with 17 grams of medical cannabis. Fogel was found guilty a year later for supposedly engaging in what was deemed large-scale drug smuggling. He was sentenced to 14 years at a labor camp. Last night, President Trump welcomed Fogel to the White House. Fogel thanked the president for securing his release. Meanwhile, Trump did not talk about the terms of the deal that led to Fogel's freedom, but suggested this could help to end the war in Ukraine.
The love that I was given sustained me for 3.5 years in a prison that had me in hospitals for more than 100 days. I was given more than 400 injections in that time. And knowing I had the support of my fellow Pennsylvanians, my family, my friends, it was so overwhelming that it brought me to my knees and it brought me to tears, but it was my energy, it was my being that kept me going that whole time, and I will forever be indebted to President Trump.
Did you speak directly to President Putin about
Well, I don't want to say that. I just want to say that I appreciate very much what they did in letting Mark go home.
What were the terms of this deal, Mr. President?
Very fair, very, very fair, very reasonable, not like deals you've seen over the years. They were very fair. I think this could be the very important element. You could be a big part of it, actually, because it could be a big, important part of getting the war over with Ukraine. And we appreciate President Putin's what he did. He was able to pull it off for you, right? He was able to pull it off. We think, and you're here, and you're here, so it was great. We'll tell you a little bit more about it tomorrow, but I think we've made great progress on the war also. Getting the war, I want to get the war ended.
The president also announced that another American will release today, but did not say who or from where. Some reporting this morning that Russians would be receiving someone in exchange, some sort of prisoner swap, but Joe unconfirmed too. But always good to see someone home like that. Western Pennsylvania, Marc Fogel came home wearing a Steelers cap as he kissed the ground at Joint Base Andrews and holding in his hand an Iron City beer, which is a beer right there in Pittsburgh.
There you go. So Richard, what are some of the ramifications of this? The president talked about the possibility of ending the war in Ukraine. Obviously, they're talking. What's the latest that you're hearing?
A couple things. It shows, this president, like many of his predecessors, Joe, great believer in personal diplomacy. I think it also signals that this administration will see Putin a little bit less as a pariah, somebody more you can quote unquote do business with. J.D. Vance, the vice president, is going to the Munich Security Conference this week. We'll be meeting with President Zelensky. I think what you're going to see is the pace of diplomacy towards Ukraine picking up. Ukraine is increasingly on board the idea of some type of a ceasefire roughly in place. A lot of detailed talk about European security measures that would help Ukraine, potentially even boots on the ground from Poland and other countries. And I think what's happening then is the administration is pivoting to say, look, we've got Ukraine willing to accept some version of a ceasefire in place. What are you, Vladimir Putin, willing to do? So I don't see this as directly involved, but indirectly, I think what you're now seeing is the American-Russian negotiation essentially beginning.
Right, they're talking, David Ignatius, and obviously the devastation on both sides, obviously a little more obvious to Ukraine because it is a smaller country than Russia, but This war has just been so devastating on Russia. It continues to be devastating. The drone warfare continues to exact terrible, terrible casualties on Russians. Are we getting closer from what you saw yesterday, from what you're reporting on? Are we getting closer at least to peace talks, if not an actual peace deal or an actual ceasefire?
Well, President Trump says that we are, says that we're moving forward. My concern is that all of this action is happening over the heads of the Ukrainians. And the big danger here has always been that President Trump would come in and do a deal with his friend, President Putin of Russia, and then impose that on the Ukrainians, who suffered so brutally in trying to repel the invasion by Putin of their country 3 years ago. So that continues to be a worry. You're always joyous to see a hostage released, but this was, in a sense, a transactional move by Russia to begin the next phase of negotiations, and Russia will expect something from President Trump in response to what it's done in releasing Foley.